I'm so glad you could join me. It's been a while since I've done a car book, and my husband just so happened to have this Ferrari book. Pretty cool. Road and racing. By Winston Goodfellow and the auto editors of Consumer Guide, with a foreword by Piero Ferrari. So on the front here we have red car, just the front, and you can see the edge of the wind screen or shield. Some air intakes here, front wheel, let's read what's on the inside here. Shaped by artisans and engineered by masters, coveted by the chic and owned by the self-assured, raced worldwide by the heroes of motorsport, Ferrari is passion on wheels. And, as with any creation worthy of such regard, there surrounds these cars an aura of mystery. Simply sorting out the scores of models was once the province of experts. Tracing Ferrari's competition history, for the mystique really took root on the racetrack, required a fanatic's devotion. Understanding the enigmatic genius of Enzo Ferrari, well, no one has really mastered that. This was printed in 2005 by Publications International. Here's the contents. Here we have a Ferrari that's a little bit newer and one that's quite a bit older. This one in a bright yellow. And the horse on the front. On the emblem. And then we have the other that's red. We have a foreword, the Ferrari story, the road cars, the sports racing cars, and the Formula One cars. Then you have pivotal figures in the Ferrari story, and other cars with engines by Ferrari, then other Ferrari models. Let's read the foreword. By Piero Ferrari. When I was in school, my father always pushed me to work on a farm or some other job. He wanted me to be in anything but motor racing. I imagine he was saying this because, back when I was young, every year another driver died. He wanted to protect me from this fate, but then I proved to him I had a passion for cars and engines, which started with my first motorcycle at age 14. It had just 50cc, and I modified it for more horsepower. My world changed the first time we visited the factory. We went out to a restaurant for dinner, and after that he took me over to the company. It was night, and everything was very quiet. He didn't say a word as we walked through the buildings, seeing the racing department and along the production line. I am sure my eyes were very big looking at everything. After that walk, I saw what I was missing. The tools. My passion was to touch them and understand them, to understand the pieces of the engine. I wanted to comprehend how they were made, designed, built, and machined. When I look at where Ferrari is today, back then neither my father nor myself could ever imagine anything so big. different. Much of this success helped to build the myth and mystique of Ferrari and vice versa. I often ask myself what exactly makes Ferrari, Ferrari. And every time I think about this, I find it such a difficult question to answer. But some of the elements are quite clear. In the past, there was endurance racing. Today, there is Formula One. Even in countries where F1 isn't very popular, everyone knows about Ferrari and the cars we make. People just seem to inherently know Ferraris are desirable and exotic because each of our road cars has a strong personality. When they see a new Ferrari, a car never seen before, 99% of the people know it is a Ferrari and not something else. Somehow Ferraris look and are unique. All this makes our history so vast and complex that I must say I cannot remember it all. So, when Winston writes something, I find it worth reading. His research is thorough and insightful, so it ends up an important document, one that reminds me of something or refreshes my memory on our history. But there's so much more to his words and photos, for they not just his job, his work. They are his passion, and that may be what I appreciate most of all. And there's a photo of him and his signature. So this is the long history of Ferrari, which is fine, but I thought maybe we could just take a look at the cars. So here we have the road cars, and here you're looking at an engine that's behind the seat. So here we have a 1948 to 1953 166 MM. A little boat with a large heart helps launch the Ferrari legend. Enzo Ferrari had been producing cars for little more than a year when his marketing instincts took over. The handful of machines he had made ranged in appearance from homely to plain at best. The immortal 166mm Barchetta changed that. The MM designation stood for Mile Miglia, the famed 1,000-mile Italian road race won by a Ferrari in May 1948. The 166 referenced the displacement in cubic centimeters of one of the engine's cylinders. For its seminal shape, Ferrari turned to Carrozzeria Touring, Italy's most prestigious designer and manufacturer of car bodies at the time. Ferrari knew the firm from his Alfa Romeo days, when the coach builder was building an incredible variety of street and race-winning competition cars. Touring also designed and constructed the body and cockpit for Ferrari's first ever cars, a pair of open two-seaters released in 1940 as the Auto Avio Costruzione 815. Touring's designs were not only stunning but extremely weight efficient, thanks to the company's patented Superleggera coach building system. Superleggera means super light in Italian, and that was the goal of Carrozzeria Touring, to make its bodies as svelte and aerodynamic as possible. Weight is the enemy and wind the obstacle, was how company co-founder Felice Bianchi Anderloni summed up the firm's philosophy. And I'm probably going to missay a lot of stuff in this book because I am obviously not Italian. So we have this red, sleek-looking car, windshield, or windscreen, whatever you refer to it as, hood. Then you SOHC, 140 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. It was a 5-speed transmission, and the wheelbase was 86.6 inches. Its weight was 1,430 pounds, approximately. So here we have a picture of the engine. We have this emblem on the front, the two-ring Superleggera, the Milano, the T behind, and a crown on top, and silver wings on each side. And then this was what I couldn't quite see earlier. It is in the shape of a gear, and then it has a turtle in the middle with a T and an N on the inside. Scuderia Tazio Nuvola Europa, I think is what that says. Then you have a look at the dash here. Some more photos of it, different ones. Let's read this one. 1950 to 1953. This is a 340 and 342 America. A larger engine, a dash of amenities, and the emergence of Ferrari's signature stylist. In the early 1950s, Ferrari was battling Alfa Romeo for supremacy in Grand Prix racing. To tip the tide in his favor, Enzo turned to Aurelio Lampredi, a gifted engineer with a background in the aeronautic field. Well, that ought to do it. Lampredi responded by designing the long block V12, so called because the distance between adjacent cylinders was some 20 millimeters greater than in the Colombo V12. The long block engine made its Grand Prix debut in 1950 as a 340 horsepower, 4.5-liter aboard Ferrari's 375 F1 single-seater. To civilize it for use in Ferrari's road cars, the 375's V12's bore and stroke was decreased to produce a displacement of 4.1 liters, and its compression ratio was lowered. The result was installed in the 340 America, for which Touring, Kia, and Vignale produced an array of open and closed body styles. These cars were used on both street and track, depending upon the commissioning client's order. The America moniker belied Ferrari's keen commercial instincts and the growing importance of the U.S. market. America was a land of affluence, where everything was bigger, including the size of the client and his appetite for luxury. Thus, in 1952, the 342 America was born. So it definitely has the longer front than the last one we looked at. This one is not a convertible. It does kind of remind me of an Alfa Romeo a little bit. 6,000 RPM. The 342 was 4,101 cc V12, 200 horsepower at 5,000 RPM. Both, one was a 5-speed, the 340, and the 342 was a 4-speed. The 340 was smaller at 95.3 inches, and the 342 was 104.3 inches. The weight was 2,000 pounds, approximate. Here we have some different colors. We have a black, and then this one looks like a silver. That's pretty sharp. There's another America, different kind. Let's see if we can get into a little bit different design. Also kind of has an interesting looking back to it. Here, this is a 1955 250 Europa GT, and it has kind of a cutout in the back instead of the rounded. It says little fins shaped on the edges here. Pretty cool looking car. This one's set in front of a lake or the ocean, I'm not sure which. The mountains, the hills right there. Let's see. That's pretty cool. Let's read about this one. 1955 to 1958. The 250 GT. 250 GT. Boana. And the 250 GT. Elena. Artful variations on the theme of the Grand Touring Coupe. Pininfarina's work on the last 5 250 Europa GTs paid dividends with Ferrari's first true production model, the 250 GT. The coach builder's facility was at capacity, and a new factory was under construction, so production of the 250 GT was shifted to Carrozzeria Boana. Mario Boana and son Gian Piolo established the firm in 1954 after they left Carrozzeria Ghia. Their first Ferrari was a one-off 250 GT Cabriolet in early 1956. Their Boana 250 GT was built in 1956 and 57. The 64 examples near mirror images of Pininfarina's 250 Europa GT prototypes. Production was 2 per week when Mario Boana had an opportunity to set up and run the Fiat Styling Center, so he slowly wound down production and closed his firm. He passed the work to a former key employee, Ezio Elana. Elana formed Carrozzeria Elana with former Boana partner Luciano Polo. The Turin-based firm made 49 250s, characterized by a slightly taller roofline, into mid-1958. Pininfarina then took over 250 GT production in its new facility, introducing an all-new design. Boana and Elena built the lion's share of 250 GTs, but they weren't the only coach builders making coupes on the chassis. Milan-based Carrozzeria Zagato was well known for its lightweight competition machines, and its run of 5 250 GTs was nothing short of spectacular. 2 were made in 1956, 2 in 57, and the last in 59. One from coach builder made two 250 Specials in 1957. Both took styling cues, including covered front headlights, fender lines, and general proportions from a seminal one-off Ferrari Superfast 1. They also designed a series of competition Berlinettas that were manufactured by Modena's Carrozzeria Scaglietti. The styling of these 250 competitions and their origins in Pininfarina's 250 Europa GT Specials and were an integral part in establishing the Ferrari legend. So here we have a close-up of the Ferrari symbol, the yellow and black, the horse on the front. Then we have just a crown with a B in it. For Polano, I'm assuming. This one's pretty cool. Got this black body and this white top to it. That looks pretty sharp when it's driving down the road, like in this picture. See the motion blur behind. Hey, I'd drive one of those. 250 GT, 250 GT Boana, and 250 GT Elena. 1955 to 1958. The number made was approximately 130. Engine 2,953 cc's, V12, 240 horsepower at 7,000 RPM. It was a 4-speed transmission with a wheelbase of 112.3 inches, or 2,600 millimeters. Your weight, 2,300 pounds. This one's the Super America. Another cabriolet coupe. Check this one out. That's pretty cool. 1958 to 1963. A 250 GT Spider. California. A simple spider turns out simply sublime. The 250 GT Spider California's name was most appropriate, for the man ordering it was Ferrari's influential dealer in Southern California, Johnny von Neumann. He asked us for a simple spider, said Girolamo Cardini, Ferrari's sales manager from 1948 to 1961. Von Neumann and the rest of the Ferrari world got that and a lot more. The Spider California quickly became one of the ultimate dual-purpose cars, machines equally at home on street and track. Such versatility underscored an integral part of the Ferrari 250 legend, the firm's ability to make a range of products with the same mechanicals but divergent personalities. So the Spider, the number made was 104. It says 50 LWB and 54 SWB. The engine was 2,953 cc's, V12, 260 horsepower at 7,000 RPM for the LWB, and 280 horsepower at 7,000 RPM for the SWB. Was a 4-speed transmission. The wheelbase was 102.3 inches or 2,600 millimeters in the LWB, 94.5 inches or 2,400 millimeters in the SWB. The weight is 2,200 pounds in the LWB and 2,300 pounds in the SWB. reminds me of the early 80s. So this is 1973 to 1984. 365 GT4 BB 512 and 512i Berlinetta Boxer. Enzo presents a mid-engine 12-cylinder Ferrari, but on his terms, of course. Enzo Ferrari wasn't blind to the success of the Dino or to the market's yearning for a mid-engine 12-cylinder Ferrari. When finally he decided to make one, however, he surprised most everyone by using a flat 12 engine rather than a V12. The engine design was dubbed a boxer because the pistons were opposed parallel to one another and moved like a boxer throwing jabs. Ferrari had used the flat 12 configuration for years. It appeared first in its Formula One cars in 1964 and 65. Then in 1969's undefeated hill climb champion, the 212e Montagna. Ferrari's 1970 and 71 F1 machine also were flat 12 powered. I very much like the Boxer engine because of its space architecture, Sergio Pininfarina said. For years I had to fight with a high engine and a large radiator because the engine's height automatically dictated the radiator's height. The Boxer engine was lower, making everything easier. This was the world's first road-going flat 12 engine, but the fact that it displaced the same 4.4 liters as the Daytona's V12 allowed Ferrari to use components already in production, including pistons and connecting rods. This Ferrari engine was also the first in any high-performance sports car with camshafts driven by belts rather than by chains. That made it quieter, less costly to build, and easier to service. The transmission was offset to the left, with the gearbox located ahead of the final drive to provide room for the engine oil sump. The chassis was a semi-monocoque design around the cabin, with tubular subframes front and rear. Suspension was independent all around. Pininfarina used 1968's P6 racing prototype as the design's starting point, making the 365 GT4 BB's lower portions a different color. From the top was a styling touch from the designer's 1956 Superfast 1 show car. The idea was to cut the car in two to make it look slender, Pininfarina explained. So here you can see the color change right down the bottom. You have the black over the grill, which is very low, and then the top is red, and everything is very smooth. Even the lights here are flat and not raised against the hood. So you can see the back flipped open, and then the front is flipped open here. And there's a close-up of the back. The 365 GT4 was 1973 to 1976. The 512 BB was 1976 to 1981. The 512 BBI was 1981 to 1984. The 365 GT4 had 387 made. The 512 BB 929 were made, and the 512 BBI 1007 were made. The engines in a 365 GT4 was a 4,391cc flat 12, 360 horsepower at 7,700 RPMs. The 512 BB was 4,942cc flat 12, DOHC 340 horsepower at 6,800 RPM, and the 512 BBI was the same as the 512. It was 5-speed transmission. The wheelbase was 98.4 inches on both, or 2,500 millimeters. The weight, the 365, was 3,420 pounds, and then the 512s were 3,615 pounds. There's some more views. The tan interior. Here. So a close-up of those rear lights. Kind of flat buttons almost. Reminds me of the one that Tom Selleck drove in Magnum PI. And I feel like this must have been the car. 1975 to 1989, 308 and a 328. The Dino's true successor establishes the pattern for an era of V8 Ferraris. If the Ferrari world was turned upside down by Bertone's angular 308 GT4 in 1973, things were righted when Pininfarini's beautiful two-seat 308 GTB made its debut 2 years later. Based on the 308 Dino GT4, but with only 2 seats, the GTB is regarded by many as the more natural successor to the much-loved Dino 246. England's motors summed up for many. The styling is the best to come out of Pininfarina for a long time. The Dino design comparison was apt. Like the 206 and 246 Dino, acknowledged Sergio Pininfarina. The inspiration for the 308's lines came from the Dino Berlinetta Speciale we exhibited at Paris in 1965. The 308 GTB was significant as the first non-12-cylinder Ferrari to use the coveted Ferrari name, and it was the first Ferrari with a fiberglass body. Its underpinnings were identical to the 308 GT4's, but its wheelbase was shortened about 8 inches, or 210 millimeters, to 92.1 inches, or 2,340 millimeters. As with the 2+2, horsepower was quoted at 255, and the European version used a dry sump oiling system. Emissions regulations limited the first GTBs in America to 240 horsepower. Road testers fell in love. Autosport's John Bolster marveled at its temperament. The 308 GTB is a civilized car that anybody can drive. That can afford it. The Dino 246 fans cheer up was how Paul Frere began a March 1976 road and track review. There's a worthy 2-place successor to your favorite car, and it's even better, faster, quieter, and more comfortable. Ferrari in early 1977 phased out the fiberglass coachwork in favor of traditional steel panels. In September that year, it introduced the Targa-topped 308 GTS, S for Spider. This had a removable center roof section covered in black vinyl and used louvered panels in place of rear quarter windows. And the tan interior. And the pop-up lights. This air intake along the sides and the back. Okay, here we go. Let's check this one out. 1984 to 1996, the Testarossa. 512 TR and F512M. A Ferrari once again reflects its times and helps shape them. Few Ferrari introductions could match the polarizing effect of the Testarossa, upon its unveiling at the 1984 Paris Motor Show. A Motor Trend poll of automotive design chiefs elicited reactions from "I hate it" to "exciting, aggressive, and awesome." The marketplace sided with the latter. Buyers lined up for the Ferrari 512 BBI replacement, and Testarossa-inspired body side strakes and outrigger mirrors soon appeared on new models from other automakers and became staples of aftermarket catalogs. The Testarossa was named for Ferrari's famed sports racing car of the late 1950s and early 1960s. Its groundbreaking styling was a response to engineering requirements and a backlash against the conservatism that blanketed Europe and Italy's automotive manufacturers during the most of the 1970s. For much of that tumultuous decade, automobiles were reviled as a waste of natural resources. The continent's growing socialist and communist influences meant displays of material wealth were increasingly scorned. The goal of individual achievement at work was questioned. Terrorism became a growth industry in Italy and Germany, and the power of unions increased tremendously. Automotive design and engineering progress suffered. That changed in Italy in the early 1980s with the March of the 40,000, when Fiat's workforce rebelled against the union's clout. Organized labor's pull slowly diminished over time, and Italy heaved a sigh of relief. With the lid off the kettle, creativity was free to boil. The result was that Sergio Pininfarina called an exaggeration in flamboyance. I do feel like the Testarossa was just seen as a very, it was something that you could flout. It was something that if you were very wealthy, you could have. That may have described the Testarossa's astonishing looks, but there was engineering and wind tunnel testing behind the ebullient shape. The track, for example, was much wider at the rear than the front for stability and handling, and the straked air intakes fed radiators efficiently, located at the sides rather than in the front, as on the 512 BBI. The Testarossa was roomier, more refined, and comfortable than the 512 BBI. It retained a flat 12 engine of 4,942 cc's, but added 4 valve heads and other mechanical changes for an output of 390 horsepower on European cars, 380 for US spec versions. The new car had particular significance for America as the first 12-cylinder Ferrari offered in the States since 1973's Daytona. Once it hit U.S. shores, it was clearly the fastest production car available. Motor Trend's test example hit 60 miles per hour in 5.29 seconds, 100 miles per hour in 11.3. Once you get beyond the way you expected its size and weight to feel, the magazine noted, the Testarossa is surprisingly cooperative and unintimidating to drive, particularly in comparison to its boxer Forerunner. It's an all-around delight to drive, fast or slow, and is a hospitable grand tourer. I love that. So we have the Testarossa was from 1984 to 1991. The 512 TR was from 1992 to 94. The F512M 1994 to 1996. The Testarossa had 7,177 made. The 512 TR had 2,261 made, and the F512M had 501 made. The engine on the Testarossa was a 4,942 cc flat 12 DOHC, 390 horsepower at 6,300 RPM. The 512 TR had the same size engine, but it was 428 horsepower at 6,750 RPM. The 512M was also the same size, but at 448 horsepower at 6,750 RPM. They were 5-speed transmissions. They had a wheelbase of 100.4 inches these mirrors stuck out like that. I feel like this was featured in a lot of music videos too, the Testarossa was. There's a white version. This air intake that they were talking about on the sides. Here's the back of the white. Brown, tan interior. And look, it must have even come with your own signature leather pieces as well. Isn't that lovely? Here we have the black version. Shows the rear lights. The front lights. Well, I think that's probably enough on the Ferraris for today. But we can always come back to it if we want, because it's a fascinating book. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some very fast, very expensive cars. Nice little book, or big book I should say. Anyway, I hope you're taking care of yourself, and as always, sleep well.